Alex Bregman looks like he's getting close to making his decision. Movement in the relief market, that and more ahead here at the Upside. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys taking some time out and enjoying the live show with us here on a Wednesday evening. Hopefully you guys are staying warm if you're in the South, and hopefully you guys are safe if you're on the West Coast, avoiding those wildfires. Our thoughts are with all of you out there having to deal with that entire situation. But we'll start with some baseball news right off the top with Alex Bregman. Bregman originally looked like he was going to be going to the Boston Red Sox. Well, we got a little bit of news anyway from Rafi Devers today, posting on social media that he was interested in possibly moving off of DH, or moving off of third base to play DH and allow Alex Bregman to come in. That was what we reported on earlier in the day anyway, where he liked some social media posts, expounding on the idea of Bregman possibly going to the Red Sox, what their lineup would look like, what their team overall might do in the playoffs, those kinds of things. He liked several different posts to that effect, and one has to imagine the Red Sox front office took notice of that, talked to Devers, and figured out that they are still going to have a chance to bring in Alex Bregman. Now, ideally, they would like to have had him at third base all along. They were going to have to play him probably at second base or first if Devers was not willing to move off of third base. And when you have a good young team, having a good professional hitter like Alex Bregman come in there, better defensive player as well, come in there and kind of get that group going in the right direction, that's exactly what you want. But are you really wanting to play out of position, having some positional battles between your star player that's already on your roster in Devers versus Alex Bregman? Is it right for him to still play at third base, or should he have been willing to move off of third? Well, now the Red Sox don't have to worry about any of that because it sounds like Devers is willing to move off of third base if it's best for the Red Sox. Gotta love that. He's 28 years old and still has a long career ahead of him. But for a young Red Sox nucleus that's coming up, you don't exactly want to have more animosity between the star player and the front office. They had that before. Mookie Betts, Sander Bogarts, and the like. Those guys have since moved on. They said Devers was their guy, got the extension done, and now they've done right by giving him that extension, allowing him to say, hey, I don't want to move off of third, and allowing him to come to the decision on his own that, hey, if it's for the betterment of the ball club, I'm willing to move off of third base. Welcome in, VPCZX. Yes, indeed, you were first. Holly, Sean, Caleb, Jay Snow, welcome back. Appreciate all you guys joining us once again. Let's see here. Sean, will there be any more Cubs moves? They need a starter. And could they get Flaherty or Scherzer? Those are two names I've heard in connection with the Cubs. I wouldn't be surprised if they add at least one starter, maybe two. but they certainly need at least one out there that's going to take the ball every fifth day. I would prefer Flaherty out of those two. Kind of gives them a longer term option there. They've already, kind of said they're going to go. They're going to go full throttle here for 2025. They already make the trade for Kyle Tucker. I think it'd be foolish for them to stop now and just count their chickens and see where they go by the time they get to October. I think they're still going to make some additions to this team. They're still looking for bullpen help as well, in addition to a starting pitcher, and they still haven't addressed the offense outside of Kyle Tucker. So lots to do for the Chicago Cubs. About a month until pitchers and catchers report. We should see a bunch of activity. Most notably, we should see a ton of arbitration news coming out over the next 24 to 48 hours, as the deadline is tomorrow to get those numbers in. So we should see a number of teams getting their filing done. We should see some teams finally make some decisions because they'll know what the financial numbers will likely look like after arbitration hearings are through. So we have about a month and change until pitchers and catchers. Roughly 50-60% of the free agents that were on the board at the beginning of the offseason are still out there, left to be signed. And we're over halfway through the offseason. It's time to get ready for spring training, so expect a bunch of activity, especially in the next few weeks. Welcome in, Caleb. Hello from Australia. Thank you for watching from Australia. Might be I think you're the second one, maybe the third one we've had from Australia. Appreciate you joining us. Sean, Arenado wants to go to the Red Sox. That was the other bit of Red Sox news today, is that Arenado was willing to waive his no trade to go to the Red Sox. The bit of news there, anyway, is that the rival executives around Major League Baseball view this as the last chance Arenado gets moved before opening day. I don't see that as the case, though. I mean, any team can have an injury at third base, first base, or DH, and then immediately they're a fit for Nolan Arenado. How much money are the Cardinals willing to eat? How much money are they willing to take back in a trade for Arenado? Those will also affect the trade there, but the Cardinals are looking for a new home for Arenado. We do have an Aussie. Jason, Boston is the best place for Bregman. He's there, plays well there. I would say he would be a far better defensive third baseman than Devers for me. Devers to me is an average at best third baseman. I think his best position at this point is hitter, and so allowing him to use that bat at DH, or if you have to move him over to first, do a trade like we've seen rumored before. Luis Castillo goes to the Red Sox, Casas and Yoshida go to the Mariners. That's another possibility there. But I think Bregman being their third baseman every day would be best for their infield defense. I think it'd be best for their clubhouse. I think he brings tons of intangibles and leadership skills that they currently do not have among position players. I think they got that on the pitching side with Walker Buehler. I think he'll be a good leader in that clubhouse for them. And then as far as in the bullpen anyway, with their arms, etc. But they needed a position player, somebody who's going to take the field every day, and Bregman would be that leader on the field. Now, Devers could do it, but he had to suffer through those tough years with the Red Sox. So while he's got the pedigree and respect of the Red Sox nation, he doesn't necessarily have the pedigree that gets them to a postseason, that gets them to a World Series. So Bregman has known nothing but playoff success since he came into Major League Baseball, and I think he'll have a different voice in that locker room and really propel that young team to their next finish line. The back end of Bregman's contract is going to be rough. I don't know how rough it's really going to be. He's got a lot more defensive versatility than, say, a guy like Pete Alonso. The final 3 years, say the deal is 5 years for Alonso or 6 years. The final 3, maybe 4 years of an Alonso deal would be even rougher. I think Bregman's still going to be a productive player, even into his, he's 31-ish right now, 30 years old. I think he's probably got 4 more years of productive baseball left. Then you hope he ages a little bit like Jose Altuve, where his age 35, 36 seasons are a little bit better than what you might expect. But I would agree the final year or 2, maybe 3, worst case scenario, would not be great years for Boston. But by that point, their core will finally be aged up to where they'll be able to handle any regression in performance from Bregman. Does Arenado get traded? 100%. I believe Arenado is going to get moved before opening day. Honestly, I think it's going to happen before we even get to spring training. Cobra, Stroman and a prospect for a rise. I think it'd take a heck of a prospect because Stroman's got negative trade value. I was just looking at it a minute ago. His trade value currently -7, so you're talking for a rise another 7, so it's a 14 value. You're probably talking about a George Lombard or a couple of pieces like a Hampton, Lane, maybe a Flores in there as far as the prospects that would have to go back to the Padres. And I'm not sure the Padres would be willing to do it for just straight up prospects. I think they'd want some major league talent coming back the other way as well. VPC ZX, how's everyone doing? God bless the situation in the California Republic. Yes, hopefully everybody's avoiding the wildfires and getting out of there safely. If you've seen some of the destruction, some of the videos and photos I've seen are horrific. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there in California. Jay Snow, can DeGrom ever be the same pitcher he was with the Mets? I got to see it first. Same pitcher? No. I don't think we'll ever see him get to, say, 200 innings again. He hasn't done that since, 2019? He was healthy through through 2020, the COVID year, the COVID-shortened season. But remember, that season was, 60 games, something like that? He ended up pitching, the entire season, was not injured. The first season back, the first season back to normal baseball anyway, is when the injuries really started cropping up. So, do I think we'll ever see DeGrom at 200 innings again? No. I think the best case scenario for DeGrom right now is probably 150 innings. More realistic is probably going to be around 120 innings for DeGrom. If everything goes well, I think the Rangers would be skipping, doing all kinds of acrobatics if DeGrom was able to give them 120 innings. If they got to 150, that means DeGrom was probably having to be used a little bit more than they were hoping. Either that, or he's a lot more efficient than he has been in his past. But he has been pretty efficient as well. DeGrom, when he's healthy, when he's right, is the best pitcher on the planet, bar none. The question is, how often is he actually the most healthy player that he can possibly be? Over the last 3-4 years now, not very often. You might be able to get him for a couple of months anyway, at best, is what it seemed like over the last couple of years. But I think Texas, if they had to do it all over again, I still think they would do the deal. But I think they'd go about it with a little bit more trepidation about the deal. I think they would try to go after Nathan Eovaldi a little bit harder than just saying, hey, there's an opportunity, let's jump on it. I think they would have pursued Eovaldi a little bit harder, and I think they probably would have gotten another starting pitcher a little bit higher caliber than a Andrew Heaney type of a pitcher to supplement this rotation. But they still won a World Series out of it. That's why I say they wouldn't do it over again. Jason Bregman's bat has been helped a lot by playing in Houston. I keep hearing that about Houston, and yes, I get it. It's the Crawford boxes, smaller player, hasn't exactly lived up to his potential yet, but I still think there's more elevation in his game. I think he could become an even bigger player than he is right now. By bigger, I don't mean muscle and that kind of thing. I'm talking about bigger impact, higher playoff moments. I'm talking about more production in the regular season. We haven't seen Bregman put it all together during a 162-game season. He can be streaky at times, but he definitely brings the professionalism every single day to the office, and I think that'd be great for the Boston Red Sox. Welcome in, Verlis, Lucas, welcome back. Cowboys Nation, appreciate you joining us once again. That's disappointing, 120 innings from DeGrom. I don't know about that. Just look at the Rangers rotation. You're talking about just averages over the last, 5-6 years or so. Eovaldi around 120 innings. DeGrom around 120 innings. You're talking about John Gray, 120 innings. Andrew Heaney, around 120 innings. That's pretty much the new era of baseball we live in. Now, sure, you'd like to give that or get that average up for your major league starters to say 140, 150 innings, because say you have 5 starters in your rotation, 120 innings gets you 600 innings. You need another 800 out of your bullpen. That ain't going to be enough to get it done. So sure, you're going to have some guys miss some starts. You're going to have another starter in there that probably makes another 100 innings or so out of that group. But that's still 700 innings on your bullpen. That's a lot of innings for your bullpen to soak up. And we'll see where a team like the Rangers goes. If they go to a 6-man rotation, I think that's very likely for them this season to kind of lengthen out the rest time for those starters, with DeGrom coming off of injury, Molly coming off of injury, Gray having an up and down performance year and injuries in his season as well. Eovaldi, same thing. Kumar Rocker breaking into the big leagues. Bradford had a good rookie season, but he hasn't gotten over 120 innings in his career. Jack Leiter's coming up to the big leagues. Roki Sasaki, if they manage to win the sweepstakes for him, also does not have any major league experience, and so a 6-man rotation would be exactly what the doctor ordered, not just for the Rangers, but for any team out there that's needing to A, preserve their starters, or B, just lengthen out the rest time for their starting pitchers. Just get some more people, some more bullets in that starting rotation, so their bullpen isn't quite so taxed by the end of the year. Let's try to catch up on a few of these comments here anyway. Seeing the homeless athletics spending money feels so uncharacteristic. I'm not sure how much they're going to be homeless for. We're talking 3 to 4 years. They'll probably be in Sacramento or close to it. They said they were willing to spend once they get to Las Vegas. Now they bring in Brent Rooker on a very cheap deal. Honestly, he's going to be making $2 million next year. I think it bumps up each year after that, and then finally there's a vesting option that could be worth, I believe, 22 to 30 million, something along those lines. But the A's have certainly spent money. I get your point there, but they said they were going to increase payroll all along. They're going to have to increase payroll even more so than what they've already done, just to avoid having a grievance filed against them by the Players Association, where they could be stripped of any revenue sharing that they may eventually get if they are if they are a part of that group there. The Marlins are in that category. The Rays are in that category. We could see the Marlins, Rays, and A's all add even more salary than they already have. He hasn't been the best pitcher in a while. I'm sorry, when he's still healthy, when he is healthy, he is the best pitcher, period. And yes, I'm even taking into account the 3 starts he had last year. He is the best pitcher when everything is right for Jacob deGrom. The question is, how often is everything literally perfectly right for him? Very rarely. So is he the best pitcher in the game? For a 162-game season? No. Is he the best for a one-start playoff? If you had to, pick a game or pick a pitcher for, one game in the postseason, given player health, all those kinds of things, I'd still want deGrom. But I think there's several pitchers I would prefer ahead of him as far as durability, availability, rather than having deGrom. Let's see here. Cowboys Nation, some of your local talks here are, if the O's trade for Cease, we should find a way to acquire Luis as well from San Diego. I don't know why or how it would work trade-wise, but his bat goes well in any lineup. Couldn't agree more with Luis Arraez. I would love to see the Orioles be able to get one or both of those guys, but I think the priority would be the ace there. I'm not sure how willingly or how willing the Padres would be willing to stack both of those guys in a trade, because again, it diminishes the return for one. I don't think there's a prospect that you're going to get that's top 10 in the game in return for Dylan Cease, and I don't think you'd be able to get that level of player even if you stack Luis Arraez with him. So I think you just diminish your return by putting those pieces together. If you want to bring in both, maybe you go after them separately and see if you can come to a deal first with Dylan Cease. Then circle back to the Padres, say, hey, we know you scouted our system in order, to make the Cease trade. Now we really want to bring in Luis Arraez. What would it take? And then you figure it out from there. Best pure hitter since Tony Gwynn, in your opinion? Absolutely, I would agree. He's the best contact hitter since Tony Gwynn. Evening. Jay Snow, Bregman's going to all of a sudden get better at 30. I'm not sure how all of a sudden it is. He's just never reached his ceiling as to what we expected. He hasn't put a full season offensively together because of the streakiness with his bat. He usually gets off to a rough start at one point in the year, or he'll go have a swoon for about a month or two. Of course, the baseball season is 162 games. Everybody does have ups and downs, but Bregman does seem to have. He has a lot of potential in that bat as far as the power numbers, as far as the ability to hit for contact, hit for a high average, but he doesn't seem to do all of it all at once. He'll be that aircraft carrier for you for about a month, but outside of that month anyway, he's up and down is a good way to put it. I'm not sure if you'd say he's MLB average at that point, but I would say he's not quite to the aircraft carrier Aaron Judge level hitter or Corey Seager level. I think there's still that level in his game. I'm not sure if he ever reaches that ceiling. If he goes to Boston, I think he has a good chance to tap into it, because again, Green Monster playing in Fenway, I think will rejuvenate him a little bit, even more so than playing in Houston. And as far as how much does he elevate from where he is now, I wouldn't say too much higher. You're still going to be paying for what you expect him to do in the future. I would expect probably a 270, 280 hitter. I would expect 20 to 30 home runs depending on where he goes. I'd expect anywhere between 80 to 110 RBIs depending on where you hit him in the lineup. I'd expect really good defense for at least 4, maybe 5 years out of it, and then solid defensive versatility anyway during that same period of time, and then at least decent defensive play at third base in years 6 and 7 of a free agent contract. But Red Sox are still in the running there. The Tigers are the other favorite. Now remember, the Tigers also have Yohan Moncada as a backup option in free agency if they don't get Bregman done. The main hang-up there for the Tigers is they just don't want Javi Baez to happen all over again, and you can understand their hesitation. So we'll see which direction the Tigers decide to go. I think his preference, his being Bregman, would be to go to the Detroit Tigers, the familiarity with Hinch. He also has familiarity with Alex Cora anyway as well, who also spent time with the Houston Astros at the when he was an assistant coach or a bench boss there, and we'll see what Bregman ultimately turns into. I like Bregman the player. I still think there's a little bit of elevation in his game. I'm just not sure if he ever gets there. But if he does, I think Boston's probably the best place for him to reach that potential. All right, let's see if we can catch up a little bit here. I just can't wait to see some of these dominant starters and relievers back healthy. Great for the game. Right there with you. I like seeing good baseball. Whether it's for my team or some other team out there, I just want to see good baseball being played. And for 29 programs out there, 29 teams, I think there is pretty much good baseball decisions being made. By and large, I think maybe 28 if we count the Rockies as one of those teams that struggles with making competent baseball decisions from time to time. But in general, teams really know how to operate their team successfully. They know what to do to protect players from as far as their health. But I think as pitching injuries have gone up, velocity's gone up, spin rate's gone up, we've started to see starting pitchers struggle to stay on the mound more than they had been, say, 20, 30 years ago. And hopefully we can get some of the best pitchers back on the mound and back healthy here in the next year or so. I know the Nationals have some good young players that they were really counting on that are going to miss the season. The Rangers, of course, have missed DeGrom last year. Molly missed last year as well. Scherzer's missed time due to health. Verlander's missed time due to health. And hopefully we just get to see really good baseball this upcoming season. Johnny, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Follow us over on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Let's see how many we can get by the end of the video here. Johnny, I think it's the Boston Red Sox signed Bregman. It's going to shake up a few people. Devers being asked to move. Infield shuffle just doesn't sound good to me. I'm not sure if it doesn't necessarily sound good. It's a better defensive situation for Boston. Check. Leadership in the clubhouse for the young players. Check. The front office respected the wishes of Devers by not going ahead and getting the deal done when he was vehemently against moving off of third base. Check. Now the front office learns that Devers may actually be willing to move off of third if it means a betterment for the team. Check, 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 check. These are all good things for the Red Sox. So I don't understand, the negativity as far as Bregman goes to the Boston Red Sox. Sure, you may not think he is going to have as great of a career as he did in Houston because he doesn't have the Crawford boxes, because he's 30 years old, because he might slow down due to age. All of those are the same with every free agent, though. I'll ask you this. Would you rather have Pete Alonso or Alex Bregman? Alex Bregman, better defensive versatility. Alonso may have 1, maybe 2 more years left at first base before he's a DH only, and he's a one-trick pony at the plate. Bregman can do a little bit of both, hit for contact and hit for power. I think he hasn't put it all together yet, but it's still better than what Alonso brings you at the plate. Alonso brings you lots and lots of power. Having him back up Soto, rather than whoever might end up taking a spot at first base in that lineup anyway, is a better solution there for the Mets. But if they had Bregman as a possibility, that also would be a good option. Whereas the Boston Red Sox, I don't see Pete Alonso being a fill-in there if Bregman were not to go there, if that makes sense. The more valuable player, the more versatile player is Bregman, and I just think he would be a great fit in the Boston Red Sox. If they don't get Bregman, say they figure out the money in Detroit and he decides to go to Detroit, I think Arenado would be a good option there as well. I'm not sure how much it improves them in 25. I don't think it improves them at all in 26 and 27, which is why I really would be pushing hard for Bregman if I'm the Red Sox. Bregman is a solid contact bat, in my opinion. He can move guys station to station, and his power isn't needed in all situations. It's kind of my thoughts there as well. I think he's a good contact bat, nowhere near Luis Ariz, but he hasn't really put the power and contact together at the same time. For instance, you look at guys like Corey Seager, Yordan Alvarez, players like that really elevate to that next level. Those we're talking about top 5, top 10 players in the game. Bregman is not in that category, but I think he has the ability to be a poor man's version of that, and I think he'd be a great get for the Red Sox. Jason Eovaldi's another guy who always gets hurt. He always got hurt in the past anyway. He did miss a little bit of time this past year anyway, about a month. I think he missed about a month the year before as well. So as far as always getting hurt, I can see where that commentary would come in, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily accurate. He is older. He's going to be having probably 1 good year left, and then he's going to have years 2 and 3 with the Rangers. It's kind of a little bit of a downward tilt, I would imagine. But I still think he's got at least 1 more solid year in there before we really have to worry about injuries really stacking up. I think the Rangers have enough depth to be able to weather an injury. Say Eovaldi misses 3 to 4 weeks again, maybe a month. I think the Rangers have enough depth in that starting staff and could even have more if they bring in Roki Sasaki as well. Nando, Andrew Friedman is going to be crushed if Roki goes to another team. He might go bonkers and trade and sign whoever's left. I don't know about that. I think they're still going to bring in Clayton Kershaw. I would say if Roki does go somewhere else, maybe they revisit the idea of Jack Flaherty, but I don't think that's realistic, unfortunately, for them. I think Kershaw is probably going to be the number 5-6 starter in that rotation. I think Gonsolin fits into that rotation if they don't get Roki. Beach City, welcome in. Any Padres rumors? Well, we're still talking about the ownership feud going on there, but AJ Preller and the team are going to have pretty much autonomy right now to at least discuss trades, figure out their financial situation, but they're not going to have any additional money, I'd imagine, than what they had last year. And so they got a couple of expiring deals. I would expect them to try to trade a couple of those. Luis Arraez has found his name in the headlines the last couple of days, most notably with the New York Yankees. But he would be a great hitter in front of any of the top bats in Major League Baseball. I think there's a good market for him to be traded. I don't think there's an overly likely chance that the Padres get an extension done with him. Once they come to that realization themselves, I think he will be out the door before we get to opening day. As far as Dylan Cease, he may take a little bit of time here, but I think around opening day, maybe before spring training, sometime around there, I would expect a Dylan Cease trade because I don't think they're going to be able to sign him in free agency. So they're going to try to recoup some value here before they get into the season. I think Michael King has a legitimate chance to be re-signed and or extended anyway. So we'll see if they get that job done. Jason, I've got to disagree with you on DeGrom. He hadn't been that guy since 2019. He just hasn't pitched enough, and there's a huge gap to just say he's still the best pitcher in baseball. Again, we're talking about availability. If we're talking about availability, DeGrom isn't even in the conversation. He hadn't been available at all. He's probably not in the top 100 guys that have been available. That's how far down the totem pole he's really fallen as far as availability. But when he is on the mound, when he's able to pitch, he's still just the same Jacob DeGrom. Now, is he the same guy that takes you 9 innings every time out? No, because he hasn't been healthy enough for that type of player to be there. For him to go that far in the game. And I don't think the Rangers are going to use him in that way either. I think the Rangers are going to protect him 5-6 innings max, which is why I think the DeGrom that we saw, say, pre-2019, like you mentioned, I think that DeGrom is over as far as taking the ball that deep into a game. Now, once we get to October, I think the training wheels come off. And then they allow him to, say he's got a pitch count around 70 by, through 6 innings. I think they'll allow him to go, to the 7th, 8th, and 9th once they get to October. But during the regular season, especially before the trade deadline, I don't think he has a prayer of getting out of the 6th inning. Even if he's at, say, 50 pitches, I still don't think the Rangers would allow him to get out of the 6th or get into the 7th inning, just to kind of protect him from himself. All right, let's see if we can catch up on a few of these comments here. Nando, you hear about Seattle being a sleeper team on Sasaki now. I'm not sure how much of a sleeper team they really were. I think they always were in the running there with Ichiro being on the West Coast, closest to Japan. Very difficult to see them not being in the running for an international free agent. So I always, thought they were in there. I never really discounted that possibility. But I do think other teams are more likely destinations for him. Fernandez is the left fielder of the future. Okay. Reports that the Jays and Guerrero are far apart in extension talks. No surprise. If they strike out on the remaining impact free agents, could you see them swing a trade for Guerrero or Bichette? Not during the offseason, and certainly not for the first couple months of the year. They're still trying to contend for the 2025 season. If they're out of it, say between 7 and 10 games out of a wild card spot at the deadline, then I think we see Vlad Guerrero Jr. traded because I think there will be a market for him. Bichette, it will kind of depend on how he performs this year and where the teams ultimately view him at. If they see him as an extension candidate, if they're able to trade for him, or if the Blue Jays ultimately make some headway on an extension talks during the season. But Guerrero, I think, will be a guy that gets traded at the deadline if things go poorly for the Blue Jays, which is what I'm expecting right now. Caleb, I think the plan was to sign some impact free agents this offseason, go for it one last year. If they fail to get anyone of impact, surely plan must change. You would think so, but I think ownership there really wants to win right now. And Shapiro, kind of the head baseball guy over there in Toronto, has the ear and trust of the ownership there. And while I think the rumors of them being fired are a little bit overblown, it's still a risk that they're taking right now to try to compete, but I think they're doing it at the behest of ownership. And when you're doing your job the way your owner wants you to do it, I think your job is going to be safe. It might not make sense to fans. It might not make sense for a long-term baseball future there in Toronto, but that's the way they want to operate. They want to push their chips to the center. They want to try to compete and try to sign major free agents this offseason, but they see the free agents see the instability. They see their two best players going towards free agency next year. They see the manager possibly being canned after the year. They see a rebuild or a retooling coming in the next couple of years as well. And until they sign some free agents and show some progress, some stability in that organization, I think they will continue to struggle bringing in top flight free agents. I know they've tried to bring in Ohtani last year. They tried to bring in Soto this year. They tried to bring in Bregman and Burns and miss. It's time for them to realize that their window is closing, and I think they'll realize that at the trade deadline, but not before. King is going to be filthy if he stays healthy. I agree. Johnny, the way things are shaping up, it looks like there's going to be quite a bit of shakeup this offseason for Major League Baseball. I honestly would agree with that. I think the Tigers are a better team. I think the Rangers are better than they were last year. Diamondbacks are certainly better. Giants finally have turned their page from Farhan Zaidi. I like where their direction is headed, but I don't think it's necessarily into the postseason. Dodgers, of course, the behemoth out there. Mets, in what was supposed to be a rebuilding, retooling season, make it to the NLCS and then get the best player in free agency that's available in Juan Soto. But their offseason's not done. Just bringing on Juan Soto does not mean they're a better team for 2025. I still think they need to make one more addition to that lineup to at least keep the momentum that they had going last year and kind of keep it going forward. I think having a lineup that includes both Alonso and Soto is better than just bringing in Alonso for that lineup. So we'll see which direction they go, but the Mets are still a good team. I think with the addition of Soto, they're a little bit better than the Phillies right now, and we'll see if the Phillies shake things up this offseason. But it doesn't look like they're going to, even though they really should. They haven't had any playoff success the last couple of years, at least to the levels we were expecting. It's very unlike Dave Dombrowski to sit on his hands during the offseason when he realizes the situation is starting to slip away from his really well-built team there, but they just can't seem to get over the snide in October. So we'll see what happens in Philadelphia. Alrighty, Johnny, it could be an interesting season for a lot of clubs. I kind of like what the future holds for the Brewers in the NL Central. I like what the future holds for the Nationals, but they're a year away. Giants in the NL West, they're a year away. Red Sox look really bright in the AL East. Orioles need a frontline starting pitcher, but if they can't get one, their window could close very quickly. They could, just as quickly as it opened, it could slam shut in as quick as 2 years from now if they don't bring in a number one there. If the Jays let Guerrero go, they really suck. I think they're going to go through a really terrible transition here for the Blue Jays organization. I mean, who's your starter? Who's your star player on that roster once Guerrero goes? You don't really have one, and so I think they're going to have to go through a major rebuild process if Guerrero leaves in free agency. The Jays can't land any big free agents. Yes, that is true. A lot of guys of the Mets, a lot of guys on the Mets had career years. That they did have. Rangers, the year they won the World Series, had a lot of guys have career years. You saw how those guys slumped this past season as well. So we'll see what happens in 25. Hank, no matter what, there's always an upside. I like when you say that one, Hank. Appreciate you joining us. Got about 60 of you guys with us right now. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. We'll be live every single night, breaking down all the latest action from MLB's Hot Stove. And during the regular season, we'll break down all the latest as well. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X at Upside Ascent and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Let's go ahead and get our screen pulled up here. I want to dig in to see if there's any headlines happening at the moment. We did get one addition to the Chicago White Sox, one of my favorite pitchers in Major League Baseball, Martin Perez, a guy I really root for since his time with the Texas Rangers. Just one of my favorite players in baseball these days. Signed a one-year deal to go to the Chicago White Sox. Hopefully he's able to get back to the player he once was, the year he was able to garner a qualifying offer. I would like to see him get back to that player, but I'm not sure if he will. I'm hoping he gets back to that player, but this might be the last stop for Martin if he can't get it together with the White Sox. Welcome in, Mark. Welcome in, D-Rod. Appreciate you joining once again. Things still look grim up here in Blue Jays land. Yes, they do. Sorry, my friend. We got to extend Adley, Cowser, and such at minimum. Westberg, Jackson, and Gunnar, all Boris guys. That's kind of what I'm saying. You're going to have this team get really expensive, and for a small market team, you're not going to be able to keep everybody. You've already traded away a number of prospects out of your system. Several different publications put the Orioles in around the 15 to 20 prospect range right now as far as where their farm system ranks. And so, continuing to trade for frontline starting pitchers with only a year left on their contract and then losing them for nothing in free agency does not bode well for their future as far as how their title, championship, World Series contention window ultimately stays open. I think it opened about a year ago when they in 23. They fell short against the Texas Rangers. They fell short again this year. I think they probably got 2, maybe 3 years if they don't bring in a number one right now. But honestly, I don't think they'll have a prayer if they don't get a number one starter. I still think they'll get one. It's just a matter of when and who and how much they ultimately give up. And if it's for a guy with 1 year left on his deal, they better get an extension done. Otherwise, like you mentioned, those guys are going to be getting more and more expensive as they get older and closer towards free agency, to where you might not even be able to retain them at that point. The last point, anyway, on the Orioles is that they still have Adley Rutschman being able to play behind the plate. That's an absolute win, a trump card for the Baltimore Orioles that they're not making the most of right now. Because how many good teams out there have a really good catcher and offensive force behind the plate? Very few of them. Catching or offensive production behind the plate is down across the entire sport. Adley Rutschman is a great piece to have, that you can still have a great first baseman and a DH and still get production out of your catcher, possibly MVP level production out of Rutschman, and they're spoiling it right now by not maximizing these years with all these guys on rookie contracts. So we'll see what they do, but they need a number one. Good evening, D-Rod. Big Felix the Cat, too. Felix Bautista. I would like to see them extended, but I want to see how he returns from injury first before they do that. Usually every season there's a team that surprises on the upside and one on the downside. Your choices. Upside, easy one is the Rangers. They've invested. They're going to get back into the playoffs, I'd imagine, this year. Let's go kind of off the board, though, for an upside one. How about... Let's go with the Red Sox. Even before they bring in Bregman, I think there's a good chance they get one of those wild card spots with the production they're going to get out of that rotation this year. I think they'll still get a bat, somebody to come in there and help out that offensive production. And how about them to surprise us and get into the postseason ahead of some teams that we thought might have taken a bigger step forward, like the Tigers with Scoball, and if they bring in Bregman or whoever else they get. But I'll go with the Red Sox on the American League side. On the National League side, I really like where the Brewers are at, but I'm not sure if they're necessarily a contender. I think they're a division winner type, but I don't think they have any prayer once they get to October. As far as a downside, a team that I think is a real chance to kind of have egg on their face by the end of the year, Philadelphia Phillies come to mind. Baltimore Orioles come to mind. Padres come to mind just because I think the teams in the division have really improved around them, and they've stayed a little bit stagnant. They're still looking to bring back Jurickson Profar, trying to get extensions done with Arise, King, Cease. And ultimately, I think they're going to go the trade route, and then we'll see what happens after the trade. But for me, I'll go Phillies on the National League side, Orioles on the American League side, and just kind of a dark horse, or we'll throw a dart anyway at one more team. A team that will disappoint compared to how they did last year, I'll say the Guardians. The loss of Naylor offensively, I think, will hurt a little bit, but I think overall they'll be a equally as good team with Carlos Santana at first base. They'll be better defensively, but worse offensively in equal proportions. But I don't think they're going to play anywhere near the level they played at last year anyway. Bieber's going to miss some time to begin the year as well. I think the Guardians probably finish... I'll go ahead and say second in that division. I'm going to say the Tigers win the Central, and the Royals are going to be right there with the Guardians as far as who gets that second wild card out of that, or who gets the wild card out of that division. Alrighty, the more I look at Castillo, I'm not sure if he's a solid number 2. He's worth the risk, in my opinion. To me, he's kind of a solid 2+, kind of like what your comment says there. I just don't view him as a true ace anymore, but he can fake it for a couple of years at least for the Orioles. I like the long-term value of his contract versus a Dylan Cease, who I think is a better overall pitcher with the decline Castillo has had, even though it is marginal. I think Cease is a better pitcher and could really raise the elevation there as well. Well, here now I can support the Angels fans, but my O's? Well, I like their position right now, but all of it is contingent upon them getting a number one starter. Until they get a number one, I'm going to pick them to be the team that disappoints. Once they bring in a Pablo Lopez, then we can start having faith in the Orioles once again. So I get the hesitation there as far as your Orioles, but I mean, who's your number one? That's my big question. You're already starting a series down in the hole, 0-1, and I don't think you're winning the division as currently constructed until you bring in a number one. I still think they'll do it. I think they'll make a trade for Castillo, Cease, Valdez from the Astros, Pablo Lopez, Sandy Alcantara. Any one of those guys, I think I'd pick them to be one of the good teams in the American League that have a chance to win the World Series. But until they do that, I'm going to have my doubts. That's why I'm holding back on my Orioles love, we'll call it, because they haven't done it yet. Just like the Padres, they haven't done any of their moves yet as far as trading Cease, as far as trading Arise. I'm holding back on my optimism for the Padres until I see what the return is for those guys, because I am expecting trades there. Astros, they still need to add an outfielder and move on from Presley. Dodgers need to figure out what they're doing with Kershaw once he comes back healthy, and if they get Roki Sasaki. Giants, I think we pretty know where they're going to be at right now. The Diamondbacks, I think we all know where they're going to finish right now. Rangers, I think if they add a closer, they're a little bit of a unfinished product, but they're more finished than, say, a team like the Orioles, because I think they could make their bullpen work if they had to, because they have not had a good bullpen the last 2 years. So they already know what a poor bullpen looks like, and I think their bullpen is already better than what it's been the last 2 years as it is, even without bringing in a Kirby Yates. Because that bullpen in Texas has been terrible the last couple of years. They only got good production out of Robertson and Yates last year. Otherwise, it was a grease fire in that bullpen last year. But we'll see what happens. Alrighty, thanks for good sound answers. Thank you, D-Rod. Appreciate that. Agreed, unless Grayson just has a big breakout season. We keep thinking he's going to have one. Every Orioles fan and their mother tells me this is the year Grayson breaks through. And I will say this, Grayson sounded more comfortable, confident in his own skin dealing with Corbin Burns and his free agency in the interview that he had. I forget where he had that interview. Was it MLB Network? But he looks a lot more comfortable as a player at the Major League level. Now, if that bodes well for him being more comfortable on the mound, then maybe we see better results as well. But I don't see a number one there with Grayson Rodriguez. I don't see the talent there anymore. I just don't think he gets to quite that elevation. I think best case scenario is Grayson gets to a number two in that rotation. I think they've got a bunch of guys who, at their best, could be a number two in that rotation, but they don't have a true number one. And that's kind of my issue with the Orioles right now, because any playoff series you go into, you're starting your best number two option in game one, and then you're starting your second best number two option in game two, where you're probably going to be at a disadvantage as well. But I like Sugano, I like Morton, I like Bradish, I like Eflin, I like Grayson Rodriguez, but all in their 2, 3, 4, 5 slots, not in that number one head of the rotation spot. And so until they get that done, I have my issues with it. Alrighty, let's double check and see if anything else is happening at the moment, and then we'll get into some trade talk here. Nothing there. Head over to MLB Trade Rumors. Nothing there. Alrighty, now, as I was kind of waiting to go on the air, I've been spending the better part of the last hour, hour and a half, going through some trade ideas for you guys, and just thinking of some really out-of-the-box trade ideas for you guys. So, let me scroll down here. This is where we left off. Okay. We'll start with Ryan Presley. I keep mentioning how the Tigers are a fit for Ryan Presley. They're connected to him. Well, what would a trade really look like? Remember, the Astros are looking to save a little bit of money. You give a couple of mid-tier prospects back, Samuel Gill, Owen Hall, whoever might be in that 15 to 30 range for Ryan Presley. I think that would get it done. That would save the Astros roughly $14 million, giving them $11 million with which to use to bring in an outfielder. I think that trade would be about what we could see for Ryan Presley if he goes to Detroit. Same thing if he goes to LA, something similar there. Let me see, got a few comments rolling in here. Oh, they disappeared. Okay. Let's look at the second trade here. The Rangers, they say they're paying lip service right now to the fact that they think they're not going to have to spend at the top of the market to bring in a closer. I'm calling bull on that one. I think they'll still add a closer, whether it's Kirby Yates or Ryan Helsley or some other top-end closer. But one that has not been mentioned at all is the Minnesota Twins' Yohan Duran. I think he's going to be a really good closer for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think he has that level of player. He's got 3 years left on his deal right now. The Rangers, if they brought him in, I think a trade would look very similar to something like we have here. Um, you have Smith, Harris, Santos, and Dreiling, 4 pieces. I think it's a little bit of an overpay for Duran, but when you're getting one of the less available closers in the game, one of the most dominant pitchers in that ninth inning role in Duran, I think you're going to have to overpay just a little bit here. And so, sure, it's going to hurt losing Josh Smith out of that lineup, but I think he had a pretty good year last year, and I think the only chance you're going to have to trade him at this type of a value is right now. And so I would capitalize on that. Twins get a good utility player they can utilize around their infield. Say if they wanted to move on from Carlos Correa, he could easily fill in there at shortstop while they went a little bit cheaper with the new ownership coming in, even though they say money is not an issue for the new ownership coming in. They got plenty of interest already. They don't need to pare down payroll. I'll believe it when I see it. And then, of course, they have Pablo Lopez. But what's the next most valuable piece on that roster would be Duran. So that's kind of a sneaky one I had my eye on just in case something happens. Just kind of, you guys ask me all the time, what's an out-of-nowhere trade we could see? Something like this, where the Twins are trying to maximize, their next contention window. They go through a full rebuild if they move off of Pablo Lopez before the season or at the trade deadline. We could see a trade like this now or at the deadline as well. Alrighty. Now, the next trade here was just another one for the bullpen for the Rangers if they really wanted to go after Mason Miller. I don't think this is overly likely, though. Just to give you an idea what a trade would have to look like, Rosario, Smith, Gray, and Dreiling. I don't think that's enough for Mason Miller. I don't think the Rangers would do that trade for Mason Miller, so I don't think that one has any legitimacy. I just see Rangers in our comment section all the time asking about Mason Miller. I thought it was a possibility, say, a month ago, but the more I keep looking at the value of the pieces that they have that they'd be willing to trade, I just don't see them fitting as a trade partner. Now, if there's a 3-team trade out there, maybe they could make it work, but I just don't see it. I think Mason Miller is going to stay a member of the Sacramento A's, I guess is what they'll be this year, for at least this coming season and maybe another year after that. Then I get a lot of Mets questions always asked to me, and I'm curious about what they're going to do with their rotation once they get to the trade deadline. Say Framber Valdez doesn't agree to an extension, and the Astros are just trying to figure out how to maximize his value before they lose him in free agency for nothing, like they're losing Alex Bregman. So they go to the Mets and say, hey, you need a number 1 type pitcher in your rotation. They say, sure, but we're not going to give you our top prospects back. So they give him Peterson, somebody who's got 2 years left on his deal this year and next, to at least help out their rotation this year. Peterson immediately goes in the rotation for the Astros. Then they get 2 decent prospects in Vargas and Barrow. I like the deal for both sides. I think the Mets get a really good number 1/2 with Senga and really get a really nice rotation going. And say they bring in Tanner Scott, you have 2 really good starters, Game 1 and Game 2, Senga and Valdez, with Manaea in Game 3. That's a really good 1-2-3 in any postseason series. I'd still prefer the Phillies. I'd still prefer the Dodgers, but they would be right up there with them and a lot better rotation overall. But then you look at the bullpen with Diaz in their 9th inning. Say if they do get Tanner Scott, that'd be a great 8th, 9th inning. And then you just got to figure out the 5th, 6th, 7th, and maybe your 4th and 5th spots in your rotation. See if they give you enough production out of those spots. But I think this would really elevate the Mets to the next level of contention by adding a starting pitcher of Valdez's caliber. And who knows, maybe they get an extension done there. But a trade like that I could see making sense either before the season, if Valdez does not agree to an extension by a quote-unquote self-imposed deadline by the Astros before spring training. I'm sure the Astros are fielding calls on Framber all the time just so they know what his value is in the open market. But a trade like this would make some sense because they get a starting pitcher back and controllable for 1 more year as well. Is he anywhere near the level of Valdez? No. But he will give you at least solid number 3, 4 production out of that rotation for the Astros and at least continue to build out that farm system that's really been missing some top-end talent for the last 5, 6 years now. Most of that talent has already graduated to the majors and already filled spots that have they've had vacated by guys leaving in free agency. The Correas, the Springers, the Coles, the Verlanders of the world have all left in free agency, and they've had to call up their minor leaguers, the Hunter Browns, the J.P. Francis, the Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker's now been traded. They don't have those top-level prospects available. They brought one in via trade for Kyle Tucker in Cam Smith. He immediately took over as their number 1 in their system, but I think that's one trade we could see at the deadline or before spring training as well. Then I got crazy with it. The one team I think you guys know pretty well that I don't really like the way they operate as a front office is the Los Angeles Angels. I think they should be in full teardown mode right now. I think they should be looking in acquiring assets. I don't think they should be trying to push for a wild card. They're nowhere near contention. Even with Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, when they're healthy and available, they weren't able to sniff the postseason. And you're saying with Mike Trout being 50% the player he was before, and with 50% availability, that bringing in a Anthony Santander is suddenly going to make you a wild card contender in a wide open American League? I get it. You think the American League is wide open. It ain't that wide open. I get it. The Dodgers have made you look like a clown with the loss of Shohei Ohtani and how good they are at bringing in top-end talent. You want to be able to, not be laughed at as the laughing stock of LA because the Angels are where they are and the Dodgers are they are. Tough. It's the situation you made for yourselves. You made your bed, now lie in it and get out of the situation by doing the hard work that's necessary to do so. So, here's some optimism if you're an Angels fan. These trade ideas, the thought process behind both of these is to take on bad salaries in an effort to bring in top-end prospects to link or to give yourself a bright future going forward. So I looked at the contracts that they have on their books. They got Rendon and Trout as big money salaries that are going to be on their books for years. So what would it take for them to really use the money, use Artie Moreno's cash as a way to bring in talent, the way that the Mets did when they realized, hey, we're not going anywhere. Let's go ahead and utilize the trade market, eat some of the deal that we have for Verlander, some of the deal that we have on Scherzer, and bring in some top talent via trade. Remember the deal that the Los Angeles Dodgers did to bring in Adrian Gonzalez, Crawford, and basically took all the bad contracts off the Red Sox books. They made a team out of it, and that's really what started the Dodgers' success. So something like this would be something that would work for them. So say they take on the bad contracts. I'm saying they're bad in Castellanos and Walker, but you get Justin Crawford out of it. I think he'd be on your Major League roster within a year or two. I think Eduardo Tate, I think, is a 17-year-old catcher. Really good value there. You got another good catcher already on your roster. But at 17 years old, he probably graduates to the big league level in 3, maybe 4 years. By that time, Hoppy's probably going to be a free agent. And so now you got your catcher of the future here. And you get $25 million as well. The Phillies do this trade because they're saving, I believe, $76 million in Castellanos and Walker. They're sending 25, so the total value they're saving is what? $51 million, and the Phillies are absolutely locked up as far as payroll right now. If they were to offload those two deals, they could make some moves happen, and then Dave Dombrowski could do Dave Dombrowski type things, make some trades, move around in the free agent market, those kinds of things. But the return here, Brock Burke, is just a nominal piece to go back the other way. So that one piece, the quote-unquote bag of potato chips, that's what Brock Burke would symbolize in this trade. But here, they're taking on roughly $51 million in commitment to be able to bring in 3 prospects there. You look back to the way the Rangers were in their dark days when they were going through the rebuild there. They brought in Austin Jackson at $8 to $12 million from the San Francisco Giants, and they got a prospect out of the deal. I think they got a top 15 prospect for their trouble for $12 million. For $51 million they're taking back, I think you're going to get a pretty good prospect out of it. Crawford and Tate, I think those are, prospects 3 and 5 in their system. And then you get another one there in Griffin Burkholder as well. So I like that trade for them. Same reason as well that they take on the money in an effort to bring in some prospects. The other part of those is that the deals expire in a couple of years. So by the time Rendon goes off the books, Castellanos goes off the books, Walker all go off the books, you're going to have lots of money to spend in free agency. And by that time, your guys should be getting close to ready at the major league level by that point. And who knows, the Astros might have continued to fall off just a little bit. Mariners' rotation might have gotten a little too expensive for them. Rangers, who knows? Corey Seager might not be the same player he was because the age might be finally getting up to him. And then the Angels could be the team to beat in the NL or in the AL West in as many as 3-4 years from now. This is the path the Angels should be taking, not trying to make a splash in free agency and just taking up roster spots for no reason. The roster spots here that would be taken up. Walker, if he returns to some value, maybe you eat some of that money in Walker's deal and trade him at the deadline if he turns into a productive player. At worst case, he eats some innings for you. Castellanos, I don't think he'd play much with the Angels, but I think he'd be a good DH option for them. When Mike Trout's not available, Castellanos could be in his spot. And then of course the whole point of the trade is the prospects. The second trade here is with the Yankees. They're looking for a middle infield option, somebody who can play a little bit of third, a little bit of second base, Jazz Chisholm type of player. They would get that in Luis Rengifo. Low-cost option. I think he's making around, $6 million this year. That's very affordable for the Yankees. And what do? They get off of Stroman's money. They get off of LeMahieu. That saves them what, 30 million, 50 or 40 million or 48 million dollars total. And instead, to save that 48 million, they're not even having to include any money in that deal. And the Yankees are just shipping out Lombard, their number 3 prospect, I believe, Hampton, Lalane, and Flores. I would love both of those deals if I was an Angel fan. Honestly, I'd love the deals if I was Yankees or Phillies as well. Might seem like a little bit of an overpay, but for the Yankees, with the financial situation that they say that they're afraid of going above the tax, this would be one way of clearing it and filling a hole on that roster, giving yourself a little bit better versatility in that infield, somebody with a different skill set than everybody else on that lineup as well, and I think it'd make them a better team. Then they'd have the ability to go out there and say they wanted to go after a Bregman. They'd have the money to do it now. Say they went after Nolan Arenado. They'd have the money to do it. Say a pitcher came out, say Rendon blows his arm or whatever, and they have to bring in another starter. Now they have the ability to go into the trade market at the deadline and get whatever they need. Vlad Guerrero Jr. becomes available. They can go out there and get him because they don't have to worry about the money of the deal. So I've been pretty hard on the Angels, but these would be the moves I would make if I was in the Angels front office. Remember, I like smart baseball decisions. You got to think ahead of everybody else, man. I mean, everybody else has the same groupthink mentality. And one way the Angels can use the pocketbook of Artie Moreno is the same way the Mets did with Steve Cohen. They didn't have a good year, so at the trade deadline they said, hey, we'll eat half the contract or more of Scherzer and Verlander. Just give us some good prospects back. That's the thought process here for the Angels. They are not going to compete for a wild card. It's foolish to think that they're going to be a better team and make a wild card. Even with the AL being wide open for the wild card spots, there's no way they're going to be a better team now with Anthony Santander and a 50% as effective Mike Trout and 50% available Mike Trout than having a 100% available Shohei Ohtani in his prime and Mike Trout as well. There's no way that's happening. Let's be realistic if we're Angels fans and just say, hey, let's take a step back. This is a rebuild. There's no reason why we should go out there and try to short circuit this. So I would like to see them do some trades like these. Seattle deserves better owners, in your opinion? Well, as far as the Seattle Mariners go, I get their tough financial situation. It is self-imposed from ownership. They should be more willing to open up the pocketbooks, but I'm not the owner of Seattle. They still have a business, quote-unquote, to run. It is the business of baseball. But you also want to field the best team you possibly can. I think they've given them enough money to where they should at least contend for a wild card. I think they need to address their offense more than anything else. But you'd like to think that with that rotation, they'd loosen up the purse strings just a little bit more, so they don't have to completely destroy that rotation, or the best rotation they've ever built in franchise history after just 1 year because of finances. You'd think they'd bump up their payroll to say $25 million, then you could afford to bring in a couple of bats via free agency and figure it out after that. But instead, they're going to have to offload Luis Castillo to get the money they need to bring in the bats that they need. So we'll see. D-Rod, you like the Yankees trade, but they are high on Lombard. Perhaps they can add Arias instead. I was kind of debating between the two, but Lombard had a little bit more value, a little bit more juice to make this trade make a little bit more sense. I think if you take out Lombard and you put in Arias instead, you're going to have to include another piece as well. The baseballtradevalues.com site, anytime you get over 6 players, it says this trade is not likely to happen. And it's not very likely that we see 7 players for 1 in a trade in real life either. And so that's kind of why I put Lombard in there as the face of this trade, the return for the Angels, the player they point to and say, this is the reason why we take on $49 million in future in salary commitments. It's for George Lombard and the 3 other prospects that we're getting. They're not doing it for Arias and the 3 or 4 prospects that they're getting. That Lombard's a better piece. They can have him up at the major league level a lot quicker as well, and really have him take over for Rendon in that infield. But those are a couple of trade ideas for the Angels. Just something to kind of think about with the Angels saying that they need to make a big splash. This is the big splash they need to be making, not in free agency. Not spending $20 million on Kikuchi. Instead of doing that, why don't they just go out there and do this trade right there? Hey, you could have taken on roughly $18 million in Stroman right there and gotten an asset along with it. Say you just did a swap there with Stroman and Flores, roughly the same value. You get a prospect out of it and a pitcher to go in your rotation for a couple years. You save a year on the backside of the deal as well. A year earlier for free agency for Stroman. Come on, it just makes too much sense. All right. I think I made... No, is that it? I think that is it. Okay. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. Again, not too much baseball news, but the Red Sox, a lot of baseball news for them. They are back in it for Bregman more than I thought they were 24 hours ago. Positive headlines with Devers' willingness to move off of third base makes them a renewed destination for Bregman. I still think his preferred destination is the Detroit Tigers, but we'll see if that one gets across the finish line. They're very hesitant and worry about the possibility of it turning into another Javi Baez situation, but the Blue Jays are circling on that one as well. Sarcastic, welcome in. What would Taylor Ward bring in a trade? We'll go ahead and do one for you guys just to see what his value is real quick. Ward. His value is about 15, so just to kind of give you an idea of what his value is worth, let's just do the Yankees just because a lot of players, or a lot of people know what the Yankees have. Let's go ahead and put the Yankees in this one, not to say that he would go there, but just to show you what a return could look like. Round 15, you're looking a little bit less than Lombard, a little bit more than Arias. That's where your value is for Taylor Ward. Anthony, welcome in. Can you do a 3-team deal, Marlins, Yankees, and Dodgers? I can try. We'll do one of those. I haven't done a 3-teamer with y'all yet tonight, so let's go ahead and do that one. I know you're Marlins fans, so let's put them in there first. You said the Dodgers were the last team there. Let's see here. Who would make sense off of the Marlins for them to trade? Alcantara, of course. Cabrera makes some sense. The Cabrera's been connected to the Yankees before, so let's just say that Cabrera goes to the Yankees, just cause. We'll do Alcantara to the Dodgers, something like that. Okay. Yankees, they're getting Cabrera, so you're needing roughly 17. You're not getting Lombard as a 1-for-1 trade. So let's say Arias is the headliner of the package, and then you round out the deal with Maya and Cunningham, maybe? Something like that. The Dodgers, if they're getting... Oop, I put him on the wrong one. Put him back on the right team here. Sending him to the Marlins. There we go. Dodgers, they would have to give up a fair bit of talent here. All of it in the minors. Kind of a trade we've already done before. Let's do it with Zaire Hope anyway, a guy who has a lot of talent. A guy that a lot of prospect analyzers say he's going to have a real breakout year for them. If he does, that'd be a great get. Morales is an absolute beast as a 17-year-old. If you want to look at his numbers, I invite you to check him out. He's going to be a great player. Those are 2 premium bats that are going the other way. Let's see, that's 28. You need roughly 18 more. Let's go ahead and throw in the pick. Pretty sure we're going to get a warning on this one, but you can only trade 6 players to a team. Yeah. Okay, so let's take off Cunningham. $59. Let's take Maya out and put in, I don't know, Peyton Martin. No, we need more talent. Kendall George. Let's see what that does. Still gets you not very close. Let's go with Quintero. Really big return there. And now you'd send a couple pieces the other way from the Yankees to make it a real 3-team deal. Say you send prospect back to the Dodgers. And who was the other one we sent the other way? Let's do LaLane back to the Dodgers as well. I think it's a little bit over, and then the 2 extra would have to come from the Marlins. So you're getting down to these guys. Cronin would be a good bullpen option to send to the Yankees. Where's Nardi? He's at 10. So let's do Cronin to the Yankees. There we go. Validate the trade, fair trade, post it, and let's take a look. So there's your trade that you were asking for. You get a pick, you get several position player prospects, 2 of which I think have really high upsides in Morales and Hope, and then one of the better position player prospects in Arias coming from the Yankees. Yankees get some pitching depth there if they have injuries. They have some backup there, and a 7th, 8th inning guy in Cronin, a guy with a bright future and lots of control. The Dodgers do this because they're getting a top-end starting pitcher out of it in Sandy Alcantara. How likely do I think this trade is of happening? Goose egg. But you asked for the trade, so I try to accommodate all of you guys out there. We won't do a whole bunch more anyway, but it is getting late. I have a long day tomorrow. I got to leave early for work because it'll probably be icy on the roads. They've already closed schools around my area for tomorrow, so hopefully you guys stay safe and healthy out there. Hopefully, if you guys are affected by the wildfires, you got to safety. You and your family got your valuables out of your house, whatever else. Just make sure your family is safe first and foremost before you worry about the pictures from 30 years ago. But please make sure you're safe and taking care of everything that you need to be taking care of, everybody. D-Rod, does Spencer Jones get any traction on MLB trade values? You asked about his value. I'll show you what his value is real quick. Yankees. Spencer Jones, right around 20 is his value. It's right underneath my arm, so let me raise it up on the screen. There we go. Caleb, if Alonso signs somewhere other than the Mets, who do you see as a fit for them at first base? Honestly, I think he goes back to the Mets. If they don't sign Alonso, then I think it becomes a big question mark who they get at the trade deadline, because I don't think there's another one out there. Let's see here. Anthony, who is Yohendry Vargas? Shortstop prospect, I believe. Man, now I really can't stand Bregman. Let's see here. Stay safe. Stop trying to trade Spencer Jones. I don't think the Yankees are trying to move him. I don't think that there's a team that could pry him away from the Yankees either, because I don't think there's enough interest outside of the Yankees organization that would give the Yankees what they value him at. And so I think he's going to stay with the Yankees. So don't worry about that too much, David. I think he's going to stay a member of the Yankees. Alrighty. Appreciate you guys joining us. Make sure you guys stay safe. Stay away from the wildfires. Drive safely tomorrow. Stay warm out there. And we'll see you tomorrow evening. Appreciate you guys. Stay safe, everybody.